Betting on sports can be hard, but hiring Morgan & Morgan is easy. Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury firm. They have over 100 offices nationwide and more than 1,000 lawyers. Their fee is free until they win. Find out more information at forthepeople.com/bestbets or dial #law, that is #529 from your cell phone, and that is FOR, thepeople.com/bestbets. This is a paid advertisement. A warmer friendly hello, welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the Beast and Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you as we're going to be joined in segment number 2 by Blake Lovell, who does such great work over at Southeastern 16. We have to take a look at what we're going to be getting in SEC play. We're going to be breaking down all these teams. We're going to be taking a look at some of these Saturday matchups and so much more. And the reason why I'm bringing him on today is because when it comes to the college basketball Saturday podcast moving forward, there's going to be no guest when we've got north of 125 games to break down. So that's going to be wild and crazy, but it is going to be wild and crazy what we're going to be seeing in the SEC. So always great to be able to get Blake aboard. He'll be joining me in segment number 2. And then in the final segment, gonna get you guys picks and analysis out of our game on the betting board for this college basketball Friday as we hit some bank shots. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at Juden_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM, naming does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to on this podcast via that 5-star review. Did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, but we had a fun day of college basketball on Thursday. Let's take a look back at it, try to find some trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
Right now, St. Bonaventure is your top against the spread team at 12-1, but Elon's not too far behind as Elon gets the job done once again. They're now 11-2 against the spread. They take down North Carolina A&T, this by kind of 75-67, so just barely covered -6.5. They go just 7-25 from 3, while A&T was 11 of 26 from the outside. But for Elon, they win that rebound battle 48-36 as Matthew Von Komen, 7'3", 7'4" big man, 10 points, 10 boards, 3 blocks. He was able to get the job done for Elon, and a team that certainly got the job done. How about the beatdown Illinois put on Oregon? 109-77. And here I was thinking that my under had an opportunity because I think that there was something like 25 points in the first 10 minutes, and then Illinois from there completely explodes. 64 points in the second half, 16 out of 29 from three-point range. For Oregon, they did have Supreme Cook coming off the bench for 20 points, but Trey White a double-double, 20 points, 11 rebounds. Kylan Boswell had 15 points. You didn't even have too much out of Kasparas Giannouskis, who he had 16 points, 6 boards, 6 assists, and he was the number 2 scorer on the night for this one. Ben Humericus was able to give you 18 points. Just an absolute display from Illinois in that one. For Purdue, it's been a little bit less than savory against the spread for them thus far this season, but they do persevere. They get the job done against Minnesota by kind of 81-61, and for this Minnesota team now, 1-11-2 against the spread. Oy, that is the worst mark in all of college basketball. For Purdue, they go 11-25 from three-point range as Braden Smith, 20 points, 10 assists, 6 rebounds. Nice performance there. Fletcher Lawyer, 24 points. Smith and Lawyer combined to go 9 of 17 from three-point range. For Minnesota, you had Dawson Garcia chip in there 20 points, and that was about it. So that was a little bit less than impressive from them. What was also very impressive, what we saw out of Washington as well. It's a little bit surprising that you had Maryland entering the day unranked, but for Maryland, they are unable to hold up against Washington. 75-69 the final. It's been a little bit rough for Washington this season as well, but for Washington, they had great Osborne, B grade, 20 points, 14 rebounds, and Zoom Diallo was able to put in there 18 points as well as Maryland led at the half, and then this game faded into the abyss in the second half. So that was a little bit less than tremendous for them. And then also in Big Ten play, you did have Indiana get it done against Rutgers, this by count of 84-74. Rutgers now just 5-8-1 against the spread. Been a little bit rough for them, especially on the road. Ace Bailey did his part, 39 points in this game, and nobody else had double figures. So that was not so tremendous, as you also had Dylan Harper not be in this game as well. So that was relatively brutal for Rutgers. Meanwhile, for Indiana, they go 12-27 from three-point range. Double-double off the bench for Umar Ball. Why he was coming off the bench, I have no idea, but but 17 points, 12 rebounds for Indiana. They win the turnover battle 11-8, so they're able to get the job done there. And Penn State, they do get the job done on the money line, but they do not cover the spread against Northwestern. This by a count of 84-80. This closed at about a 4.5, opened up a little bit closer to 6, but for this Northwestern team, they only go 6 of 22 from three-point range. Brooks Barnizer, Nick Martinelli, they combine for 38 points, and Barnizer, 8 assists, 10 rebounds, and for this Penn State unit, you had Zachary Hicks be able to fly the team with 20 points, and for Penn State, they actually lost their turnover battle 17-16, but they do find a way to persevere, and they were able to get the job done. In terms of other teams in the top 25, Gonzaga, another non-cover for them. They win, but they do not cover a Mondo north of 33-point number against Portland. This by a count of 81-50. Not really off-putting by Gonzaga's defense was very good. Just a little bit of a, shall we say, overinflated number. Gonzaga now 6-9 against the spread. As for Portland, they go just 4 of 25 from three-point range. Gonzaga 11 of 24 from three-point range. And Michael Ajay off the bench had 15 rebounds in this game. As for Gonzaga, they win the rebound battle 47-36. They won the turnover battle 15-7. So nice throw domination out there, and a team that has been really good against the spread this far this season is Oregon State, but things are starting to get stuck in neutral for them. They have failed to cover each of their last 4 games, and they lose to Loyola Marymount on the road 82-61 as the Mount goes 10 of 24 from three-point range. Javon Porter, 22 points, 13 rebounds. He was the best performer in this game, and Michael Rata, he looked relatively solid for Oregon State, 19 points, 5 steals, 5 assists, 6 rebounds, but the rest of the guys did not break double figures. So Loyola Marymount, they were able to do a nice job winning that rebound battle 38-27, and they do indeed get the job done. Being able to get the job done as well. San Francisco on the road, they win 89-81. Now, the spread was right around about 12.5 points, so they do not cover that one. But for San Francisco, 14 of 31 from 3. They've been a relatively good defensive outlet as well. Not necessarily so much there. And Santa Clara, this is a team that's starting to play a whole bunch of overs. 81-80. They get the job done against San Diego, but for the Santa Clara team, I can't remember the last time they played an under. They might have played an under back when they played against Fresno State. That was about a month or so ago. But, I mean, this has been a team that I believe has now played each of their last 6 games to the over. So they've been getting relatively hot with that regard. Now, your best over team, that'd be North Florida. As for North Florida thus far this season, 11 overs and 1 under. They played another one against Austin Peay. An Austin Peay team that has been slowing things down to a crawl. They go on the road. They get the job done 97-89. As in this game, you had Austin Peay go 34 of 39 at the free throw line. And Todd Brookshire off the bench with 14 of 14 at the free throw line for 25 points. Meanwhile, for North Florida, 25 of 31 at the free throw line. North Florida wins the turnover battle 10-9, but you had Austin Peay win that rebound battle by a count of 35-31. So things got harebrained and crazy out there. South Dakota has certainly been one of your best over teams as well. They have played 11 overs to 2 unders, and this was one of the unders. UMKC, they put them at a chokehold, 68-54 the final is. For South Dakota, they do go 23 of 29 at the free throw line, but they could not get their normal tempo in this one. You had Jamal Brown chip in there, 19 points, 11 boards for UMKC, so we'll see if that's a sign of things to come for them. And St. Thomas has been a very good over team as well. They played yet another over on Thursday as they and North Dakota State. North Dakota State, 10 overs to 3 unders. They've been 2 of your better over teams in all of college basketball, 89-85 the final. For North Dakota, one of the top 10 teams in terms of three-point shooting percentage, and that continued 13 of 32 from distance. Problem was St. Thomas was 15 of 32 from the outside, and in this game, you had North Dakota State lose the turnover battle by a count of 10-4, even though they won the rebound battle 40-25. Did not matter in this one, as for St. Thomas, they continue to get the job done out there. Getting the job done in terms of unders, we've seen a lot of teams from the Northeast Conference be able to do so. Kansas right now is actually your best under team in all of college basketball, 1 over to 11 unders. And by the way, that Austin Peay game that I was highlighting against North Florida, Austin Peay just 2 overs to 10 unders thus far this season. So very much an outlier out there. But what else has been a little bit of an outlier has been UMKC, who I just mentioned, 9 unders to 3 overs thus far this season. And Lipscomb has been another one of those teams that has been playing a bunch of unders as well. 70-65. They get the win against Jacksonville, and they just barely cover -4.5 in this one as well. But for Lipscomb, they've now played 9 unders to just 3 overs thus far this season. And for Lipscomb, they go 7 of 15 from 3. They actually shoot 56.5% from the floor. They had 16 turnovers in this game. Jacksonville had 15 turnovers, but for Jacksonville, not able to get a ton going from the floor as they went 6 of 15 from 3-point range, but the turnovers really did stagnate this game, and Lipscomb come, they do find a way to persevere and get the job done. We've also had quite a few teams out there in the Big West that have been playing quite a few unders as well, as UC Santa Barbara and UC Davis, both 8 unders to 3 overs entering into the night. I have to do this by midnight Pacific time, so right now we are at halftime in that Hawaii versus Santa Barbara game. Right now trending to the under, though, and for Cal State Bakersfield, meet the Roadrunners. They did get an over on the board against UC Davis, and they did get the job done. 75-64 the final in this one, as for UC Davis, you did have Ty Johnson supply the team with 26 points, but team went just 4 of 21 from three-point range at Bakersfield, 26 out of 33 at the free throw line. So that got things cranked up. UC Irvine has been a pretty solid defense, but on this night, it was a very overwhelming game against Cal Poly, 98-89. UC Irvine gets the job done in overtime as Cal Poly hits a 3 with a few seconds remaining, and then Cal Poly was catching 7.5 points. They go to overtime. They hit a 3 with about 10 seconds remaining in regulation to force overtime, and then they don't cover. So anyone that had Cal Poly, that's rough. You would have rather just had that game wrap up in regulation, as you had 3 separate players for UC Irvine, Miles Shea, Bent Lucan, Devin Tillis, all give you at least 22 points in this one. So harebrained and insane to say the least. And what else is insane is what we're seeing right now at Cal State Fullerton. They got down 60-26 at the half in this one. They lose to CSUN Cal State Northridge on their home floor 95-65, and quite frankly, it wasn't even that close. As for Fullerton, they had 22 turnovers to 20 made field goals, and you had CSUN go 17 of 39 from three-point range. As you had Marcus Adams Jr. supply the team with 20 points. For the CSUN team, they were able to win the turnover battle 22-7, by the way. They won the rebound battle 35-33. Just good, clean, thorough domination in this one. So that one was relatively fun, and it was just a very exciting night in general. With regards to college basketball, so you also have Memphis just absolutely take it to Florida Atlantic, 90-62 the final in this one. And Florida Atlantic has been one of your better over teams in all of college basketball this season as well, but not a lot doing for them as they go 5 of 31 from 3. Memphis, by the way, 10 of 18 from three-point range. Dane Danger off the bench. He was able to supply the team with 16 points. So for Florida Atlantic now 8 overs to 5 unders. And for Memphis, they were able to get a nice, clean, easy win out there. And what else has been interesting to take a look at, the Skullgate Raiders team. They've been one of your lesser teams against the spread this season, but 71-59. They've been able to get the ship righted recently. They were able to get the job done. You had Western Kentucky on the road come back against Liberty. Old Liberty Bibberty entered in this game 12-1, and they were up 14 points at the half, but Western Kentucky outscores Liberty in the second half 50-35, 71-70. They find a way to be able to get the job done. This actually stays under the total. Western Kentucky goes just 5 of 17 from three-point range, but where they won was on the glass, 45-35. So nice, clean, quality win for them, and a nice, clean, quality win for Illinois State, as Murray State has been reeling a little bit recently. So they have been a team against the spread that has been a little bit rough, dating back to the Diamond Egg Classic when they did not follow when they were up 3 points against Charlotte. So they're now 4-8-1 against the spread. Illinois State 74-68 winners in that one. They're now 10-3 against the spread, by the way. So it's been a relatively good run of things for them, and it's been a relatively good run of things as well if you've been backing UC Riverside. As UC Riverside, they go on the road, they get the job done against Long Beach State by a count of 76-60. If you're taking a look at this UC Riverside team against the spread, they've been able to make you a little bit of coin, as they're now 8-4-1 against the spread. Irvine, by the way, with that cover on Thursday, they're now 9-4 against the spread, and we shall see what UC San Diego is able to do moving forward as well. I believe that they were off yesterday, but they're now 9-3 against the spread themselves. So lots of intrigue out there in the Big West, and lots of intrigue in terms of what we're seeing in college basketball right now. If you're looking at the trends of the sport over the last 7 days, things have been just a little bit underwhelming. 108 unders, 104 overs with the Hawaii game pending. Meanwhile, underdogs just continue to bark. 116, 94, and 6 against the spread over the last 7 days. Overall for the season, underdogs hitting in the neighborhood about 51%, as the dogs are at 1,137, 1,071, and 35 against the spread, while overs overall this season hitting at about 50%, 1,116 and 1093. So that's what we're seeing in college basketball right now, and that's what we all got on Thursday. And now let's take a look at what we're going to be getting in SEC play, and to do that, we call upon Blake Lovell, who does such great work over at Southeastern 16. He joins me next right here on Coast to Coast Hoops, with myself, Greg Peters, and now a part of the Houston Family Podcast. We're back back to your lovely Las Vegas for Cups Gussy with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the Easton Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by this man as Blake Lovell does such a tremendous job over at Southeastern 16. Taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. Certainly the SEC and football may not be quite what it was. Who knew that the SEC is actually a basketball conference? And Blake does a great job of being able to cover it all. I know that he has been hard at work there. On top of that, does great work over at the Clutch Point Sports website / app as well. You're able to follow him on Twitter / X at the Blake Lovell's. Last name is spelled Lovell. And Blake, it's always great to get you aboard, my friend. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks as always for having me, Greg.
Thank you for joining me, Blake. And Blake, we are finally going to be getting it within the next few days. Conference play in the SEC starting, and just what are some of the things that you're going to be looking for in SEC conference play? Because you noted this on the podcast and it came true. All 16 teams here in the SEC, 10 plus non-conference wins, just absolutely unprecedented what we've seen. And I think that it's just going to be a gauntlet for every one of these teams because we know that the strength of schedule in the SEC higher than that for any other conference.
Yeah, it certainly, as we've mentioned many times so far this season, Greg, I mean, it's just been kind of an unprecedented start for the SEC. And now, though, even for me being the ultimate optimist, this is also where the pessimist has to come in and say that teams have to lose games now, all right? Like, not everybody's going to be rolling through winning all these games because somebody's got to win and somebody's got to lose. And I think that's what's going to be interesting to me and probably is the biggest storyline is which of these teams are able to stay at the level that they've been playing at and which of these teams are going to fall off because inevitably some have to. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that I'm looking at, especially, these first couple of weeks of conference play. That is really in a year like this where every game feels like it's difficult. You're trying to really pick apart, okay, who has the best schedules these first several weeks, because that could make a huge difference, as we get later into the year, trying to compile some of these wins early. Let's say if you have some of those teams that are projected near the bottom of, again, the strongest conference in the country, what does that really mean? I don't know. But, those home away splits, how many times do you have to play Auburn? How many times do you have to play Tennessee, Florida, and so forth right now? Like, those are all things that are going to matter in a season like this for the SEC. But, if you want to also be the optimist here, you're not in a situation in the SEC. I don't think there's a single team who's looking at this thinking we have to go at least 10-8 to get into the NCAA tournament. I think 9 wins is all you need, all 1 through 16 right now. Pretty much any of these teams are going to be able to get in with 9 wins because they're going to have so many quad 1 opponents on their schedule. So, it's just unbelievable. This is kind of the setup we're looking at.
And let's say that you've got 10 wins outside the conference, you get 9 within the conference, you win 1 game in the SEC tournament, that gets you to 20 wins right there as well. So if you're keeping track at home, that should be able to allow a lot of these teams to be able to get into the SEC tournament and to be able to get into the NCAA tournament. And I do think that that is going to be an interesting dynamic of things. And what else I think is going to be interesting is taking a look at some of these teams that maybe are a little bit more under the radar as well, because we all know how great Auburn has been. We all know how great Tennessee has been. You're able to go down the list of the top 25 teams. Heck, Oklahoma has been undefeated for this season as well. But how do we take a look at some of these teams like an LSU? I think is going to be very interesting. South Carolina got off to that rough start losing to North Florida, but ever since then they've been rolling. You just go down the list and every single year we have 1 or 2 of those teams that come from out of nowhere. They look awful outside the conference. They go 500 in conference play. Who do you think might be that team that could be able to rise up?
Yeah, it is going to be interesting, as you said, Greg, because, there are some of these teams. We talk about the win totals and such, but sure, we also have to point out that, hey, I mean, this is also a situation where some teams have played in the 350s in the strength of schedule if you're looking at it from that standpoint. Yes, there are a lot of wins, but a good portion of those wins are against teams that are not that great so far this season. And so I think if you factor that in, that's where you have to figure out, okay, a team like Vanderbilt, who's in that kind of scenario, can they, with a little bit of lack of size, like, are they going to be able to match up in the SEC? That, Mark Byington loves the 5 point guards on the floor at one time type, sort of mantra. And I wonder if that's something. Can they just use their speed, playing one of the fastest tempos in the country, to be able to kind of counter some of that size disadvantage they're going to have in the SEC? And then I think, there are other teams, right? Look at Georgia. I think they're interesting. I know I brought them up multiple times. And I think, like, Georgia's a team I go back and forth on a little bit because you see what you feel like they're capable of, in some of those bright spots in a win over St. John's. Then you see some close calls, against the South Carolina State and games like that. And you're like, all right, can Georgia really handle the grind of SEC play. And then even Missouri, I think, is an interesting case too, Greg, because, I've always talked about my guy, Dennis Gates, and I know it didn't go so well last year, as we know in Columbia, but Missouri's a team that's not played a strong strength of schedule at this point, but they have that win over Kansas. And I know Kansas has lost some games and all that. But that's a signature win. And you need those as you go into SEC play. They lost that close game to Illinois, lost on the road at Memphis to start the season. No shame in that. They were up double digits there. So I tend to think Missouri can handle a grind of SEC play. And then, as you mentioned, teams like LSU, South Carolina, it's so important to get off to a good start because, again, it goes back to what does your schedule look like? And I think that's where, look at a team like LSU, who I just noted this earlier as I was looking through the schedules. They play Vanderbilt on Saturday, but then after that, they play 4 of their next 5 games in SEC play on the road at Missouri, at Ole Miss, at Texas A&M, at Alabama. And then your reward after that is coming home and playing Auburn on January the 29th. So that is how it's going to work for some of these teams. So it is going to kind of be survival of the fittest here to see which of these teams can emerge. But I think Missouri, Vanderbilt, those are 2 teams that really got my eye on as potential sleepers because, like you said, there tends to be one every year. But I think those teams are the most intriguing to me right now.
Yep, I do think that there's going to be a ton of intrigue with those teams and so much more. As joining me on the show, we do have Blake Lovell, who does such an incredible job over at Southeastern 16. He's joining me on Coast to Coast Soups and taking a look at what we are going to be getting over the weekend. There are going to be some just titanic battles in general, starting off with that Kentucky versus Florida game, which that's going to be the earliest game to tip. And I think that this is going to be so telling because with Florida, they've really been the team that I don't want to say comes out of nowhere because we thought that Florida was going to be a rock solid team, but I don't think anyone had them at 13-0 and just absolutely bulldozing the way that they have. I believe that every one of their wins, except for that game against North Carolina, has been a double figure win as well for them. But now they have to go on the road at Rupp Arena to put that undefeated record on the line. What do you anticipate from this game? Because I think that out of all the games that we do see for Saturday, this one might be the most intriguing one, and obviously is the first one.
I agree with you, Greg. I think this is just such a fascinating matchup with these 2 teams. And, when we do our previews and our predictions at Southeastern 16, I'm like, this first opening day slate, throw your hands up in the air and try to figure out exactly what you value because it's kind of a little bit different for these 2 teams. But there is one number that I look at and I'm like, SEC teams went 125-2 at home in non-conference play. So I'm like, is this kind of a setup where Florida has to go on the road? First time they played in this kind of environment this season, right? They played the road game at Florida State back in November, but that's the only true road game they played. I know the North Carolina one was in Charlotte, I think, but still, it's different going to Rupp. And I think that's where we're really going to find out a lot about Florida. Like, I feel like there are a lot of these teams, as good as the SEC has been this season, teams like Florida, Oklahoma, even Tennessee, I think, to some people. This is like a prove-it weekend to like showcase yourself against, again, the strongest conference we've seen to this point in quite a while. And I think this is a great opportunity for Florida because look at their guard play. We always say what's going to get you, the furthest. When you're looking at what can you lean on, it's usually you got to have great guard play. Well, they've got great guard play. Walter Clayton's one of the best players, not just in the SEC, but in the country. You look at what Elijah Martin has brought from FAU to this team. He's been fantastic. He feels like a first team, second team all SEC guy to me already. And then it's like those usual guys that have sort of been there and are now playing bigger roles, like Will Richard. We knew what he was capable of last year, but look what he's doing, giving them that trio of guards that really are just tremendous so far. But I think, Greg, the big thing, we talked after the SEC tournament this past year, and we were thinking, man, that Micah Henlogden injury on this front court next season, what's that going to look like? Because we know they weren't going to have Tyree Samuel, and we're thinking, what does the front court look like? But when you look at the rotation they put together in this front court, Alex Condon, Ruben Chinyelu, you got Sam Alexis, Tommy Hawk in there, like all of these guys, I think that's been the biggest difference for Florida. Their defense is so much better than it was last season. That was the big thing that held them back, as we know. I mean, go back to the NCAA tournament game. You score 100 points and you don't win, and I think that is what's been the thing that's helped them be 13-0, just beating teams unmercifully right now. As good as their offense is, one of the best in the country, I think it's their defense that's going to carry them a long way, and I think have a great chance to be right there with an opportunity to win the SEC.
I agree with you. That defense has been so good for them, and I do think that is going to be so much fun to take a look at because, as we know, as well with this Kentucky team, they have been a rocket ship on offense. But that said, Amari Williams has been a guy that has impressed me on the defensive side of things as well. They've done a good job on the boards, but obviously had that less than savory effort just before Christmas against Ohio State as well. So that's obviously going to be a fun one, and that's going to be the game that actually kicks off SEC play. So going to get off to a nice start there. And then this is one that I think is going to be a lot of fun as well because there are a few guys that used to play for Tennessee currently on the Arkansas roster. With Arkansas, they're really the team I feel like is starting to be able to build a little bit of upward momentum, being able to knock off Michigan on a neutral court. That Miami win is starting to look a little bit, shall we say, less impressive than it was at the beginning part of the season, but still they went on the road, got the job done there, knocked off Oakland by 30 points. What do we make out of this Arkansas versus Tennessee game where Tennessee in their last few games outside the conference, maybe it was complacency, maybe it was the holidays, did look a little bit lackadaisical.
Yeah, and I think that's why, I mentioned a minute ago just about like a prove it type game for Tennessee. I mean, there are people that are picking on Tennessee like, hey, they're 13-0 in all this. They can be ranked number one in the AP poll, but I'll continue to say I think Auburn's the best team in the country, and I don't have a lot of doubt about that. But, okay, their strength of schedule is not what Auburn's or Alabama's or teams like that was. It's like, in the 180s or something like that. But Tennessee, for the most part, has, again, it's been their defense. Like they have just not allowed teams to get anything going offensively, and that saved them a couple of times, right? Look at that game in Illinois where they went on the road at the buzzer. They didn't play well offensively, but they did just enough, and they held them to 64 points. And like you said, some kind of sloppy performances over the past couple games, especially look at that Norfolk State game. They win 67-52 there. But I do think, in terms of the ceiling offensively for this team, we didn't know what it was going to be this season without Dalton Knecht. Well, we've gotten our answer because Chaz Lanier has been somewhat close to Dalton Knecht. Not saying he's the same player, but he is a guy that at any time can go off for 20-plus points and hit, 5 or more threes. And that's exactly what they needed. And I think that's what, with Tennessee, is still going to be the thing that gives them, an opportunity to be one of the favorites to win this conference because they not only have the defense, which they have every single season, but I think you're just going to eliminate a few more of those offensive gaps and those stretches where they don't score for 6 or 7 minutes. Yes, we've still seen that a couple times this year, and you may see it more as they play better defensive teams in the SEC. But I just think having that X factor in Chaz Lanier is a big difference. But meanwhile, with Arkansas, as you said, Greg, I think this is a team that there were some people that just jumped off the bandwagon right after Thanksgiving when they lost that game to Illinois. But don't look now. I mean, these guys are playing pretty well right now. And, remember, the whole thing with Arkansas in non-conference play was we were trying to figure out, are they ever going to get their entire rotation actually on the floor and actually have everybody available for a game? And I don't know that they've had 1 or 2 games this season. That may be it, where they've had all of their top players available at one time. And so John L. Davis, I feel like he's still, kind of in that iffy zone. We know he's been dealing with the wrist and all that, but now they've gotten Jonas Adu back. As you mentioned, this is the Jonas Adu revenge game. He has made a huge difference for them. I think on the defensive side of the floor, he's scoring points, but I always thought like him being a kind of defensive stalwart is exactly what this Arkansas team has needed. And they've been better than advertised than we thought they'd be maybe on the defensive end of the floor. So game-changing guards, especially what Boogie Flan's done. Adu Thero has been one of the best, I think, most improved players in the country this season. He looks like a first-team All-SEC guy right now. It's a big opportunity and a big prove-it game for Arkansas, I think, because what a way to start SEC play would it be for John Calipari to walk back into Knoxville, where, remember, the last time he took a team to Knoxville was late in the season last year where he took Kentucky, in there and got a win. So we'll see if he can do the same here in this one.
Yeah, John Calipari has always had quite a bit of success against Tennessee. Now it's very much a different circumstance. This is a completely different Tennessee team. So this one is going to be a lot of fun to be diving in on. And I just think that there's a lot of intrigue in general with regards to the SEC because you mentioned it. You're echoing the sentiments of myself. I do feel like this Auburn team is the top team in all of college basketball. But when it comes to Elite Eight Final Four, I think that there's just so many teams out there in the SEC that are able to be contenders. And even though I do think that Auburn is that top team in all of college basketball, I don't think that they're completely bulletproof. I don't think that they're a completely unfallible team in general as well. And I think that this could be an Auburn team that when it's all said and done, I wouldn't be surprised if they lose 4 or 5 games in conference play because I think every team in this conference is losing at least 4 games in conference play.
Well, and I think that's what, that's the big question is as good as Auburn has been this season, you're about to not just, and they played a strong non-conference schedule, but you're about to play these games every single night, like in SEC play. And I think that's what we're going to find out. Can they go through the grind and be able to just win a lot of those games? I will say, when you look at the way their schedule starts, their first 5 games, they're home against Missouri, at Texas, at South Carolina, home against Mississippi State, and at Georgia. I think Mississippi State's certainly the best team of that group, but that one is on the Plains at Auburn. I think those other 4 teams, Missouri, Texas, South Carolina, Georgia, we mentioned, 3 of those earlier, and I think you had Texas in there. those are also teams that I think want to prove something and see if they can kind of keep that momentum going that they built up in non-conference play. But, Auburn has simply just been a lot better right now. And so I think that's what's going to be fascinating here is that when you look at Auburn's schedule, they don't have to go to Tennessee. They don't have to go to Florida. Obviously, they've got 2 games against Alabama. They got to go to Kentucky and Texas A&M in the final week or so of the season. But really beyond that, I think there's a lot of opportunities. So it is going to be interesting. How many of those teams, when they go on the road, because that's the thing, Greg, we always talk about, Auburn is the team now, sort of the team everybody's looking at. Like they're the new Kentucky or whatever. Anytime Kentucky comes into town, look out. Like Auburn feels that way this year because they are the team that everyone knows has had this historic start, not just for Auburn, but for a lot of college basketball over the past couple of decades. They've been that good. And so I'm curious to see, as you said, if Auburn can navigate that and get out with 4 or fewer wins. But for everybody else, I'm not sure because I think Auburn right now, to me, is still the only team that could separate itself and be able to be the one. Again, if someone's going to finish with 4 or fewer, I think it's them. Everybody else, when you look at the schedules and the way they set up, my goodness, it is going to be hard to kind of get out of this conference play with maybe anything fewer than 5 or 6 losses potentially.
Oh, it's going to be absolutely insane. And then I do want to ask you about this as well, as Blake Lovell does such amazing work over at Southeastern 16, joining me on Cuz Soups. We know that last year, a hallmark of the SEC was these teams playing super duper up tempo, playing high scoring games. Do you expect a little bit more of the same this year, or do you think that we might be seeing a little bit more variety of styles? Because when the margins are so thin in a conference like the SEC, I do feel like some teams might decide, you know what, we're going to zag while everyone else zigs. I think that that's going to be an interesting element of things as well. Is there going to be a team that tries to separate themselves from everyone else in what feels like just a gauntlet of a conference?
Yeah, I mean, as you said, I think you can look at just some of the tempo numbers and all that, and it's interesting because we've looked at teams like, let's say, a Mississippi State, who has kind of flipped its identity a little bit, whereas we were kind of used to, okay, they're going to be a little more methodical because they're going to play through their front court and those kind of things. And, well, now it's a bit different this year because they're playing to their guards and that kind of stuff. And I think that's what's going to be interesting because you are going to see some of those stylistic mismatches in some of these things and who's going to be able to dictate the tempo. We know Alabama's going to play like Alabama always has. I mean, look at what Mark Byington has brought to Vanderbilt, right? He's going to play up tempo. We know that, but there are going to be some of these games I think that you're going to, well, and we have to add this too, Greg. There's going to be some free throw shooting contests in the SEC. We know that every year. You're going to have some games where you have 60 plus probably free throws that are going to be shot. We know to understand that. But it is going to be something where I think you see a lot, at least at this point. And look, these numbers are going to fluctuate more because now you're going to play better offensive teams. But as I said earlier, look at the way Florida has gotten better defensively. Look at how well the usual teams of Tennessee and Auburn and Texas A&M and teams like that are playing on the defensive end. I mentioned Arkansas, I think, has been much better than people thought they would be defensively so far. Look at the way Georgia's playing. And so I think teams like that are going to be able to, all right, figure out, hey, how do we dictate this game to where we're going to put all the pressure with our defense on these teams because there are a lot of good offensive players, a lot of good offensive teams, and just see, how does that kind of make these games go. So I think you're still going to have your usual, some of these games, if it's Alabama or Kentucky or Auburn or, Florida, Vanderbilt, teams like that may get up there in terms of the points and all that. But as you said, it's a grind this season. I wouldn't be shocked at all if you see some of these games, sort of maybe the offensive numbers take a little bit more of a step back than the defensive numbers just based on that.
It is a grind this season, and the ultimate grinder is you, Blake, because you do such a tremendous job taking a look at this conference. You've been treated to some great basketball this season. You're going to be treated to a ton of it the next 2 months, and I know you're going to do a great job of covering it also. Let the good people at home know it's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yeah, I always appreciate it, Greg. Yeah, you can find us on Southeastern 16 on YouTube. We're actually doing an SEC tip-off marathon live stream on Friday night, so you can check that out, Greg. I mean, because who else, Greg, would be doing like 3 to 4 plus hours of straight SEC basketball interviews and discussion other than us at Southeastern 16? So you can find it there. And yeah, everything else, you can follow me on Twitter at @TheBlakeLovell.
Absolutely. Blake does an amazing job taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball, and every single time he joins me, lends such great insights. So big thanks to Blake for joining me on Cuz Soups, part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And coming next, it is that time of the podcast to give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this College Basketball Friday as we hit some bank up. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN family podcast. Always great to be able to get aboard Blake Lovell, who does such great work over at Southeastern 16. Taking a look at this great game that we all know of college basketball. Every single time he joins me, lends such good insights. Did so once again today, so big thanks to Blake for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Friday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at GNet_D1. Going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order. This is pretty much all the games in time order except for the Northeast Conference. Those 4 Northeast Conference games, those are going to be at the bottom. They're a part of the extra games board. So we do get things started with 871, 872 on the card. Merrimack is going to be playing us Fairfield. Fairfield is an underdog of 7 points, and your total on this game, 139, and I'll be doing a write-up on the total, and I am in on the under on that one. For Fairfield, this has been a team that has been well outside the top 250 with regards to total possessions per game, and Merrimack is one of the slowest teams that you're going to find in all of college basketball. They are 357th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and Merrimack, they're not quite as good at being able to generate turnovers as they have been in past years, but still a top 75 team with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and for Fairfield, you just don't have a lot of firepower with regards to this offense as well. For this Fairfield unit, you've been relying upon Prophet Johnson for a little bit of everything, and he's been solid. 12 points, 7.5 boards. He throws in there a few assists per game, as Jamie Burgeons has been your main man in the backcourt, giving out about 3 assists, 9.5 points per game, and does shoot about 42% from three-point range. To the credit of Fairfield, they only turn the ball over about 10 times per contest, but they shoot 41.5% from the floor, 32% from three, while playing relatively slowly, and other than Prophet Johnson, you really don't have anyone else that gives you north of 4.5 rebounds per game, as Peyton Smith throws in there 4.5 boards per contest. Everyone else on the team, 3.2 rebounds per game or less. And for Merrimack, typically they're outgunned on the boards, but they should be fine here with Sean Trumper being able to supply the team with a steal and a half, 5.5 boards, 9.5 points per game. And is now shooting 38.5% from three. And in the month of December, Merrimack shot well over 35% from three after a slow start to the season from three-point range. This has always been a team that has been hot and cold from three-point range. Malik Eadman just has not given you a lot this year. So remember, he was a 9.5 point per game scorer a few seasons ago. We saw him against St. Mary's be able to bust out for 10 points, so a little bit of upside there. And Aaron Clark is going to be by far the best player in this game. 20 points, 4 boards, 5 assists, shooting 35% from three with darn near 2 steals per contest. He has been a dominator for this Merrimack team, and it's a Merrimack team that they themselves do a solid job taking care of the ball. Even though they play slowly, they don't really turn it over a lot. Only about 10 turnovers per contest. I do think that Merrimack should be able to take it to Fairfield in this spot. If you do get into a late game fouling scenario, it is a Merrimack team that's shooting 76.5% at the free throw line. Being able to get the 5.5 rebounds per game out of Brian Entomino as well should help this team be able to remain relatively even up on the glass, and with the way that they generate turnovers, should be able to get past this Fairfield team. So, did somehow line at 8.5, I'm going to be willing to lay the number, and with regards to write-up, I'm going to be in on that total under as well. 873, 874 on the betting board. Akron is on the road against Bowling Green. Bowling Green is an underdog of 6.5 points at home. Total on this game is 153.5. I'm going to write this one up as well. I'm going to be in on the points with Bowling Green. For Akron, we've just seen a big giant fall-off with regards to the defense. They're outside the top 160 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Typically, this is a really good defensive team under John Gross, and for Akron, even though the offense has been relatively solid, if you look at them overall, top 155 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but when they're on the road, they're outside the top 250 with regards to points scored per possession. They're quite literally scoring about 30 points fewer per 100 possessions away from home rather than at home. Now, you do have Johnson squared as Tavari Johnson along with Nate Johnson have been able to combine for about 25 points per contest, darn near 7 assists per game. And Johnson does throw in there a steal and a half per contest. Nate Johnson, as they're both last name Johnson, but with Tavari Johnson does shoot 39% from three-point range. And this has been a Bowling Green team that has been rough with regards to their defense. They're outside the top 270 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but I do think that they're going to be able to do a relatively solid job of being able to shoot some threes themselves, as at home they're shooting about 38.5% from three, and if this is a little bit of a nip and tuck game, they shoot 80.5% at the free throw line. Each of your top 3 scores shoot at least 77% at the charity stripe, as main guy for this team has been Marcus Johnson, 6'7", 265 big man that has supplied the team with 16 plus points in each of the last 3 games, shooting 40% from three, north of 90% at the free throw line. They have been dealing with some injuries. Sam Towns, your top top rebounder has been out really since Thanksgiving, so that's been a tad bit of an issue for them, but they've been able to get a little bit more down low with the 4.5 rebounds per game of Jemai Felt at 6'10". He's a freshman that's been able to step up in a big way with 6+ rebounds in 4 of the team's last 5 games. Not really a guy that's going to give you a lot offensively, but certainly someone that's going to be able to be up with this Bowling Green team. They're under the tutelage of Todd Simon, who always loves to play quite a bit more up-tempo, and typically this is an Akron team that they like to play a little bit more slowly. Like the fact that Bowling Green is about 83rd in the country in terms of total possessions per game, not a surprise, but Akron being 25th. Like this has been a complete and utter tempo shift for them, and I do think that it's going to continue. I do think that Akron going to see those offensive splits iron out just a little bit more as well. I think that they're going to be a tad bit more successful against the Bowling Green team. Let's call it what it is. They have given up 80+ points and now each of their last 3 games against a Division I competition, but this has also been an offense that's been very rock solid, getting past the 75-point plateau in 3 of their last 4 games overall, and I do think the Bowling Green going to be able to hold in there, even though Akron should win that battle down low with James Okonkwo giving you about 8.5 rebounds per game. So did some line at 3.5. We'll take the points with Bowling Green and wrote that up, and made my total 155.5. I'm in on the over as well. 875, 876 on the betting board. It is Wichita State on the road against Temple. We give our O to Lane Kiffin. Go well. Says Temple is a 1.5 point favorite. So on this game, going to be getting it anywhere between a 153 to a 153.5. And another game they'll write up as I'm going to be in on this total under. Did set my total at a 146. Now you've got a pair of teams that they're not playing at warp speed, but they're playing a little bit more up tempo. With Wichita State and Temple, both of these teams in the top 125 in terms of total possessions per game, but really don't have a lot of 3-point shooting efficiency out of both of these teams. Both of these teams outside the top 225 with regards to 3-point shooting. Do you think that Temple moving forward going to be a little bit better offensively with getting back Lynn Greer? But in the 4 games that he's been back, he was the main facilitator over at a pair of different schools the last few seasons over at St. Joe's along with Dayton, and he hasn't given you too much thus far. About 5 points, 3.5 boards, assists per contest. Like typically this is someone that is able to give you about 4 or so assists per contest, so that doesn't help out a Temple team that's still, even despite the fact that they haven't had a main facilitator, there's nobody on the roster that's really giving north of about 2.6, 2.7 assists per contest. They've been able to keep relatively good care of the ball, only turn the ball over about 10.5 times per contest, and Jamal Mashburn Jr. has shot 44% from 3, supplying the team with 20 points per contest. From there, you've got Steve Settle alongside Stanford, who've been able to combine for 23.5 points per contest. Settle has been able to give you about 6 or so rebounds per game. And Wichita State should have the best rim protector in there, and Quincy Ballard, who's been able to give the team 8 boards, multiple blocks per contest, and throws in there about 10 points per game. Obviously, not going to get much versatility out of a 6'11", 250-pound big man quite like that, but for Wichita State, shooting just 31.5% from 3 has been rough. Again, they're another team that they don't turn the ball over a ton, 10.5 turnovers per game, have a little bit more of a trigger man as Bijan Cortez, Justin L. Both of these guys give you about 3.2 assists per contest, but Cortez has only been able to supply the team with about 5 points per contest. Arnell Beverly shoots 23% from 3, throws in there 3 assists, 2.5 per contest with 9.5 points per game, but the outside shooting just has not been there. Saying Xavier Bell along with Corey Washington combined shoot about 38% from 3, both of these guys between about 13 to 14 points per game, but do you think that the scoring for both of these teams going to be a little bit muted? Both of these teams have been top 150 defenses in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage on the inside, and have a Temple team that's really been able to do a nice job ratcheting up their defense just a little bit. In games against D1 competition, they have now given up 71 points or fewer in 3 out of their last 4 games, so they're going to look to keep that going, and I do think that they're going to do so in this circumstance. I did set my total at a 146, so running up the under, and with Temple, set them as a 2-point favorite. I do think that they do just enough to get the job done. Willing to lay the 1.5 with Temple and in on the under. 877, 878 on the betting board. St. Peter's is playing us Quinnipiac. Quinnipiac is an underdog of 2.5 to 3 points. So last game, 138.5. Did somebody total 136.5. I'm going to be in on the under. Now, the fear that you do have with St. Peter's in this game, out of 364 Division I teams, they are 364th in terms of fouls committed per defensive play. So they will put you on the free throw line, and this is a Quinnipiac team that now as reinforcements on the way. Savion Lewis, their main facilitator, missed 3 games earlier this season. He's back. He's giving you 5.5 points, 5.5 assists, and this is a good free throw shooting team with Quinnipiac. As a collective, they're shooting 74.5% of the charity stripe, down a little bit from last year, but still, you'll take 74.5%. Paulo Tino along with Amari Moore have been able to give you more down low, combined 15.5 rebounds per game, and Monroe has been able to give you 2.8 steals per contest. That is a top 15 mark in all of college basketball, so relatively good versatility there. But for Quinnipiac, they just have not been able to give you a very efficient offense because they're only shooting 40% from the floor, and this is a St. Peter's team that they just get after it. In terms of opponents' 3-point shooting and 2-point shooting percentage, top 100 marks in all of college basketball there, and they've been able to shoot it well from 3-point range themselves. St. Peter's shooting 37.5% from 3-point range. Mason Randolph has been the main guy, being able to shoot 40% from 3. He supplies the team with 15 points per contest. Down low, Mohamed So has been able to give you a 6 rebounds per game. Was dealing with a little bit of an injury towards the beginning part of the season. He's back in the lineup for the team. Zakar Williamson was dealing with a little bit of an ailment as well. He's back. He's able to give the team about 7 points. Has been shooting 50% from 3-point range, by the way, as well. So that's been rock solid. As a matter of fact, I have your top 5 scorers for St. Peter's, all but one of them shooting at least 38.3% from 3-point range. That would be Armani Ziegler, who's been able to give you 34.5% 3-point shooting, 6 boards, steal and half per contest. St. Peter's continues to be one of the slower teams in all of college basketball with regards to possessions per game, and Quinnipiac last year was a team that really sped it up. Quinnipiac last year in that top 75 mark with regards to total possessions per game. With all the injuries that they've dealt with, they've been more around about 85th thus far this season, so maybe a fascinating team. I do think that with St. Peter's, they do find a way to be able to get the job done against a Quinnipiac team that they've been a little bit hit or miss with regards to the defense. They've given up 69 plus points in each of the last 4 games. For the St. Peter's team, though, they have really been able to do a nice job holding up at the point of attack. Gave up more than 70 points just once in the month of December. They did give up north of 70 to Fairleigh Dickinson as well, but all in all, ever since their run against Rutgers and UMass Lowell to begin the season, they've been able to do a good job defensively. They've even gone up against a lot of up-tempo teams and have been able to hold true to that slow, controlled style. So do think that they are able to get this game at their tempo, semi-line at a 136.5 with regards to total, so in on the under, and willing to lay up to 4 with St. Peter's. 879, 880 on the betting board. It is Siena playing up to Manhattan. Manhattan is a 3.5 to a 4-point dog. Total game between 141.5 to a 142, and semi-line at 2.5. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Manhattan. For Manhattan, they've been able to do a nice job being able to improve offensively. Last year, this was a team that was well outside the top 275 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and big man Will Snyder has been able to change his team's fortunes. A little bit of a block, a steal, 15.5 points, 6.5 boards, while shooting 40% from 3-point range. You've got pretty much 4 different guys that have been able to give you at least 10.5 points per contest, 6 different guys that give you at least 8.9 points per game. For this team, they really have been able to form that perfect 7-man rotation. Now, they have been a team that has been a little bit, shall we say, testy in terms of being able to take care of the ball with about 12 turnovers per contest, but that's been worked on as the season has gone along, as Shaquille Bender has been able to give you about 11 points per contest, throws in there a steal, 2 assists per contest, and from 3-point range, needs to work on the 20% 3-point shooting, but has had just 3 turnovers over the last 4 games as well. And then Jaden Winston, 4.5 assists, right around about 2.5 turnovers per game. He's done a good job being able to do all clean offense. Again, a little bit suspect with regards to his 3-point shooting, but you've got a team on the flip side that really is not going to do a ton in terms of being able to generate turnovers in Siena outside the top 225 with that regard, and they are a team that is a little bit shrimpy down low, as they don't have a single guy that gives you north of 4.2 rebounds per game. You're just looking for a little bit more, in my opinion. Reed Descharme, he was someone that was supposed to be going to the Big East level over at Xavier, really couldn't get out there on the floor for them last season, and has only supplied the team with 4 points per contest. The junior college transfer, Major Freeman, he's done a nice job of pairing up with Justice Schultz, as both of these guys give you combined about 28 points, 5.5 assists, shoots 34 to 35% from 3-point range, and then you got a 43% 3-point shooter, and Brandon Coyle's got nice versatility at 6'7". Love what he's been able to bring to the table, but I do think that the overall rebounding is a little bit of a detriment to Siena. The team has been turning the ball over about 12.5 times per contest, despite being outside the top 200 with regards to total possessions per game. It's not a Manhattan team that's going to be forcing a lot of turnovers. And as a matter of fact, for Manhattan, they've been one of your better over teams in all of college basketball. This despite the fact that in regulation and regulation only, as they've had a few games that have went to overtime, 73 points or fewer, allowed in 3 of their last 4 games. It is a Siena team that has been able to do a little bit of a better job with regards to their offense, but defensively, it's been in the skids for them just a skoge, as well as for the Siena team. They have given up at least 69 points now in 8 out of their last 11 games, so do you think that Manhattan going to be able to hold in on this one? I do think that Siena, in the end, on their home floor, they find a way to be able to get it done, but did semi-total at 140.5. I do think that for Siena, they're going to try to get this game slowed down a little bit more to their tempo, and I do think that they're going to have a little bit of success with it, but I do think that Manhattan going to find a way to be able to hold in there, especially with this Manhattan team being a relatively rock-solid team at the charity stripes, shooting about 76.5% there. So going to be willing to take the points with the Manhattan in on this total under as well. 881, 882 on the card. It is Marist on the road against Iona. Iona, a very slim 1.5 point favorite. Total on this game is between 133.5 to 134. I set Marist as a 1 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take them. I'll write down the money line. It's a Marist unit that typically is a top 65 or so team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They're outside the top 125 right now, but I do think that their rebounding by committee is going to really be able to win out of their top 5 scorers for them. Do give you at least 4.5 rebounds per game, including Jackson Price, who's got good versatility at 6'8". Shoots in the mid-30s from 3-point range, 10.5 points, 4.5 boards per contest for a Marist team that last year they were a pretty rock-solid 3-point shooting team. Not amazing, but 33.9% from 3-point range, a little bit above nation average. Josh Passarelli has been a really nice go-to scorer, shooting 44% from the outside, 17.5 points per game. In road games, that actually elevates to about 47% from 3. And for Iona, they're just playing really sloppy games. As for Iona, they're outside the top 350 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense, but they're a top 20 team at being able to generate turnovers as well. That's a big reason why we have seen these Iona games be, shall we say, harebrained and just rather insane in general. As for this Iona team, they've been able to do a relatively solid job of holding up at the point of attack. This is a unit that has given up 70 points or fewer in 3 of their last 5 games, and for this Iona team, they just have not been able to find a lot of offense as well. As for Iona, they've been able to bust through the 70-point plateau in just 3 out of their last 12 games, so I do think that this is going to be a low-scoring slobber knocker in on the under, as Marist once again well outside the top 250. In terms of total possessions per game, DeJour Reeves for the Iona team has been a nice go-to scorer of 17 points, shoots about 34% from 3-point range, and down low they've been able to find quite a few guys that have been able to give you some boards, as Yafat Moudi has been able to give you about 6.5 rebounds per game. James Patterson is throwing in there about 6 rebounds per game as well. They were without Clarence Rupert for quite a bit of time, but they've got him back, and he only played 15 minutes in that last game against Harvard, so he's trying to reacclimate himself, but overall for the season has been able to get the team about 5 boards per contest. He was someone that was part of that Elite 8 run of St. Peter's way back in the day, but again, turnovers are an issue, and for Iona, in a nip and tuck game, they shoot 65.5% at the free throw line. That needs to be an issue. Marist, not a whole lot better at 68% at the charity stripe, but I have a little bit more faith there. I do think that down low, Jaden Daughtry being able to give you a block and a half per contest, being able to hold up there, that allows Marist to be able to get the job done. And what I think is going to be a sloppier game, a game that's going to be a little bit more of a slog, and this Marist defense really starting to step up to the plate as well. In regulation and regulation, only 68 points or fewer allowed in all but one of their games in the month of December. So, and on the under, so I total 131, and I do like Marist. I'll ride on the money line. 883, 884 on the betting board. Wisconsin plays us Iowa. Iowa's a 5 to a 5.5 point underdog. Total on this game is 162.5. Did set Wisconsin as a 7.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number for Iowa. We see this year in and year out with regards to their offense. Typically, they're scoring 15 plus points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than on the road. For Iowa, to their credit, they're now a top 135 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They've been able to do a little bit of a better job there, but as is pretty much always the case with Iowa, just not the same team on the road rather than at home. They're scoring 20.3 points fewer per 100 possessions away from home rather than at home. And all of a sudden, Wisconsin is a team that's in the top 200 with regards to total possessions per game. First time in like a decade and a half. So, I mean, that was very shocking to say the least with Wisconsin. John Tonje has been your main man. He's been able to give this team 19 points per contest from 3-point, shooting about 37% from the outside. And for Wisconsin, they're just doing the little things well. A top 30 team in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. They shoot 85% of the free throw line. If that's not number one in all of college basketball, that's certainly in the top 3, and got a lot of guys that do a nice job of making sure that opponents don't get a second chance. Now, Wisconsin, they themselves, not a team that's grabbing a bunch of offensive rebounds, but their top 6 scorers, you've got all but 2 of them who are able to give you at least 4.5 rebounds per game, so they've done a nice job getting down and dirty there. Max Kleesman only shooting 28% from 3-point, should be going northward, and it's not like this Wisconsin team has been an amazing 3-point shooting team. They're only shooting about 32.5% from the outside. Meanwhile, for Iowa, they shoot as collective about 38.5% from 3-point, with Peyton Sanford, one of their main men, still only shooting about 33.5% from the outside, but heated up in the month of December, well north of 36% from 3-point, 16.5 points, 6 boards for him, but Owen Freeman is going to need to hold up down low. 17 points, 6.5 boards out of him thus far this season. I know that he dealt with a little bit of an ailment towards the beginning part of the season. He was out for that game against New Hampshire. I think that he should be able to go in this one. Brock Harding has done a really nice job of being able to dish it out for Iowa as well. Darn near 6 assists at 2.5 turnovers per game, as it is an Iowa Iowa team that despite their tempo, they only turn the ball over about 10 times per contest. They also do shoot 67% at the free throw line, which is a little bit rough considering how good their three-point shooting is, as Harding shoots 41.5% from three-point range. Same with Price Sanford and Josh Dix, as Dix and Sanford, they combine for about 22.5 points per game. I do think that this is going to be an up-and-down game. You've got yourself an Iowa unit that has gotten past the 80-point plateau, and I believe every one of their games since the Thanksgiving Day break. I mean, it's been absolutely insane what we've been seeing out of them, and this is a Wisconsin team that they've been giving up a lot more recently than they have in the past. This team has allowed 74-plus points in 3 of their last 4 games, with the lone exception coming against Detroit. So, do you think they can get an up-and-down game? I'm in on the over, sub by total 173.5, and willing to lay up to 7 with Wisconsin. 885, 886 on the betting board. Another game that'll right up. Michigan State is on the road against Ohio State. The Ohio State University finds themselves as favorites of 2 to 2.5 points. Total on this game is 149. I do like Ohio State in the spot. I did set them as a 3-point favorite, but I'm going to be writing up the under. Michigan State has been awful from 3-point range, outside the top 325 nationally. I do think that's going to tick northward as the season goes along, but they're shooting 28.8% from 3-point range. Jaden Akins is the only guy in the roster that's right now giving you double figures with 13.5 points per contest. He shoots just 27.5% from 3-point range. Colin Carr has been able to give you some versatility with 9 points, 4 boards per contest. He's actually shooting 66% from 3, obviously, on a very small sample size. And do like what Jeremy Fears brings to the table as a main facilitator. Not quite the scorer that Ty Walker was a season ago, but 6 assists, 7.5 points per contest. Like what I'm seeing there. And then you do have a 54.5% 3-point shooter in Jace Richardson that without him, I don't know where the outside shooting would be for Michigan State, but they are turning the ball over a little bit north of 12 times per game. And Ohio State, a top 55 team in the country, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis at home. They should be able to do a nice job on the glass, as both of these teams, Michigan State and Ohio State, 2 of the top 30 teams in terms of defensive rebound percentage. Michigan State really doesn't allow for a lot of second chances, but Ohio State is shooting 39.5% from 3-point range, with Bruce Thornton shooting 49% from 3, 17.5 points, 4.8 assists per game, and Ohio State really doesn't get loose with the ball 10.5 turnovers per game. Now, it's a Michigan State team that's never really been one that has been going out there heat-seeking a bunch of turnovers or anything like that, but just being able to protect the ball, I think, is going to be very big in this scenario. You've also got John Mobley Jr. shooting 48% for the outside, 12.5 points per game, and then Devin Royal with a 7.5 rebounds per game. That's big because Simon Zapala, the true 7-footer for Michigan State, has been a pretty big load down low. He's been able to do a nice job of being able to give the team a block or 2 per contest, throwing in there right around about 4 or 5 rebounds per game. Not really going to give you a lot offensively, but defensively, he's been able to do a relatively solid job, and I do think that this game slows down a little bit. It is an Ohio State team that's in the top 125 in terms of total possessions per game. Michigan State, a relatively mid-tempo team themselves, but we've already seen Michigan State hold a super-duper up-tempo team in Florian Lanning to fewer than 70 points. As a matter of fact, for this Michigan State team, they have allowed north of 70 points in just 2 out of their last 8 games. One of those games was that game that they played against North Carolina that went to overtime, and for Iowa State, on their home floor and their home floor only, because they have played a lot of games on the road that have went a little bit more harebrained. They've given up north of 70 points, and I believe just 3 of them have wrapped up in regulation. So, do you think that this game going to be slowed down a skoge? I am going to be writing up the under, sub by total 143, and with Ohio State, we'll lay up to 2.5 with them. 887, 888 on the betting board. Another under that I'll write up as Georgetown plays us Xavier. Xavier is a 1-point dog. Totals between 148.5 to 149. Really like what I'm seeing out of this Georgetown defense. Georgetown, 12th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and I think that they're going to do a rock-solid job against the Xavier team that they're having to now turn the corner a little bit more without having Zach Fremantle out there. Now, they're used to having Zach Fremantle out of the fold as he missed pretty much the entirety of last season. So this is something that they are very much used to, but it's still something that is a bit of a detriment to the team. You still have Ryan Conwell, who's been able to supply 16.5 points per contest, and this is a Xavier team that has shot it relatively well from 3-point range. For Xavier, they've been able to run some pretty good, clean offense with about 11.5 turnovers per game. Davion McKnight has been the main catalyst for that. 5 assists, 11 points per contest. Shoots 40% from 3 and overall. Xavier does shoot 40.5% from 3-point range, but this is a Georgetown team that has been able to do a really good job of getting after it. And this is a Georgetown team that's seen a little bit of a change with regards to their tempo as well. They are now outside the top 200 with regards to total possessions per game. It is a Georgetown team that at times they get a little bit loose with the ball. Georgetown, 263rd in the country in terms of ball security have done a little bit of a better job of being protected at home rather than on the road. But big reason why this Georgetown defense has been as good as it has been, the freshman Thomas Sorber, who's been able to do a good job of being able to lock things down low. He's been able to give this team 15 plus points, 7 plus boards per contest, so he has been very valuable for the team. And then Jaden Epps, he throws in there 16 points per game for a Georgetown team that hasn't shot it well from three-point range. They're only shooting about 32% from the outside, but Epps shoots 39% from three, and then Malik Mack shoots 40% from three, as he and Micah Peavy have been able to combine for 25.5 points, 9 boards, 9 assists, 4 steals per contest. It's a Georgetown team that they have allowed opponents to shoot about 32.5% from three-point range. That actually goes up to about 35% when they've been at home, but I do think that with Xavier not having Zach Fremantle out there, despite the 94 spot that they put up against Siena, without him, they're going to have some difficulty here against a Georgetown team that has just been as tough as nails on the defensive side of things. You take out that opening night game against Lehigh, and they have not allowed a single team to be able to cross over the 73-point plateau. I think that it's going to be a little bit tough for Xavier, despite the fact that they've been playing a little bit more up-tempo, despite the fact that they've been able to get to at least 70, and now 4 out of their last 5 games as well. But I do think that Georgetown locks down on defense and finds a way to get the job done. Set my total 142.5. I like the under and wrote that up, and I'm going to lay with Georgetown, set them as a 4.5 point favorite. 889, 890 on the betting board. It's St. Joe's on the road against St. Louis. St. Joe's hopes to not be average Joe's as a point favorite. Total on this game is 152, and for St. Joe's, I did set them as an underdog of 2 points. I'm willing to take St. Louis around on the money line. Now for St. Louis, it's been a less than tremendous year, to say the least, for them, but I do feel like they were able to find something in that big win that they got on the road against Fordham, and I do believe that this is truly a good team with Robbie Avila following Josh Schertz on over from Indiana State, and Avila is still giving you 18 points, 4.5 assists, 5.5 rebounds per game, shooting 37% from three. The big thing has been the turnovers with him, more than a half a turnover per game more than he had a season ago. That's been a little bit of an issue. Isaac Swope has had a little bit of difficulty from three, but he's still giving the team 17.5 points per contest, and Gibson Jimerson, always a good three-point shooter, shooting 42% from three, 19 points per contest. You know what you're going to get out of him. You also know that this is a St. Louis team that's outside the top 200 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. But then when you look at the flip side for St. Joe's, it just feels like this is a team that should be giving you a little bit more from the outside than what they have been. They've been able to do a good job with their perimeter defense, top 75 team in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, but have a pair of guys in Eric Reynolds along Xavier Brown that combine to shoot about 30.5% from three-point. Between the two of them, you're getting about 32 points per contest. You've got a combined about 9 assists, 2.5 steals per game out of these guys, but except for St. Joe's, has been a little bit, shall we say, lackadaisical from the perimeter. Now you've got Rasheer Fleming along Justice Ajabor, who combined for 3 blocks per contest, but Ajabor, 5 points, 3.5 rebounds per game. Fleming has been amazing. He shoots 41% from 3, 16 points, 9 boards per contest, but St. Joe's, well outside the top 100 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They do come in on a nice 4-game win streak. Offense has really been flowing much better than it was towards the beginning part of the season, as the team has been able to get past 75 points in each of their last 6 games. Meanwhile, for the St. Louis team, they've been able to get past 70 points pretty much on the regular all season long, since that game against San Francisco, where San Francisco, one of the best defensive teams that you're going to find in all of college basketball, they've been able to do a nice job with that regard, as I do think that St. Louis is going to be able to get things a little bit more up and down in this game. I did set my total here at a 154, so at the 152, I'm in on the over, but I do think that St. Joe's starting to round into form. Recognize that the metrics aren't necessarily the best, but I do think that they're starting to find their chemistry, being able to put that up that 88 spot against Fordham, and the fact that the defense has gotten a little bit better. They've now given up 74 less in each of their last 4 games. It's going to be just enough for them to get the job done here. I'm going to take St. Louis as a money line underdog, make them the 2-point favorite, and set my total 154 in on the under. 891, 892 on the betting board. Creighton is on the road against Marquette, and Marquette is an 8 to an 8.5 point favorite. And your total on this game between 147.5 to 148. And I did set Marquette as a 9.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay it with Creighton not having Pops Isaacs out there. That is going to be rough for them both in this game and moving forward, as for this Creighton team, they're not quite the same 3-point shooting team that they've been in the past. Now, they haven't been awful. They're shooting 35% from 3-point range. Steve Ashworth is very good from 3-point range. 17 points, 6 assists, shooting 40% from the outside, but Isaacs was a 38% 3-point shooter. Now you're looking a little bit more to Jemiah Neal. His 33.5% 3-point shooting is passable, 10.5 points, 5 assists, 6 rebounds per game. A little bit of a do-it-all sort of guy, but who comes in off the bench and gives the team a little bit of a lift. Is it going to be Jason Green, who's giving you just 3 points, 2.5 7.5 rebounds per game. They've been looking quite a bit to the freshman in Jackson McAndrew. At 6'10", 8.5 points, 4.5 boards, shoots 35% from 3, and has actually shot 44% from 3-point range in games played away from home. But this is a Marquette team that does a really nice job of being able to generate takeaways. This team is in the top 20 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and Creighton uncharacteristically north of 13 turnovers per game because Steve Ashworth is having to do it all for this team. And Marquette, unlike a lot of these teams that generate turnovers, if they don't get a turnover, they still guard the perimeter well. Top 100 team in terms of opponent's 3-point shooting percentage for Marquette. Cam Jones has been one of the best scorers in all of college basketball. 20 points, 4.5 boards, 6.5 assists. And Marquette, they themselves only turn the ball over about 8.9 times per game. Top 25 team in the country in terms of taking care of the ball. They've only shot about 32.5% from 3-point range, and this has been a Creighton team that at the point of attack with regards to their perimeter defense, they've been able to do a solid job there, as Creighton right now allowing opponents to shoot only about 31.5% from 3-point range. Does go up to about 35% when they're away from home, but CV Mitchell, he's been able to give you 50% 3-point shooting, 11.5 points per contest. Marquette is going to have a tough time down low with Ryan Kalkbrenner, but we have seen with Kalkbrenner in games against better competition, he's had a little bit of an issue. Like for Kalkbrenner, still giving you 16 plus points per contest, still giving you those 7 plus rebounds per game, north of 2 blocks per game. So he's been able to do a relatively rock solid job with that regard. But when the going gets tough, it's been difficult for him. Creighton outside the top 100 with regards to rebound rate. Marquette, in terms of their rebound percentage, it certainly has been a little bit less than Xavier as well at 170th. But I do think that the backcourt play and just having more clean possessions gets the job done for them. So did set my line at a 9.5. I'm going to be willing to lay it. Did set my total 147.5. I think that the turnovers are going to be costly to the over. So in on the under and in on Marquette. This is the last game on the normal Las Vegas betting board before we hit the extra games. In 93 and 94, New Mexico plays host to Nevada. Nevada is a 6 to a 6.5 point underdog. Totals between 150.5 to 151. Going to write up the over. I set my total at a 155.5. Fully recognize that Nevada not playing with any sort of tempo whatsoever. Nevada, in terms of total possessions per game, they are currently clocking in at 344th. But New Mexico, they've gotten their tempo all season long. They're a top 5 team in terms of total possessions per game. And for New Mexico, they're outside the top 330 in terms of opponent's 3-point shooting percentage. Nevada, they're a top 10 team in the country in terms of their 3-point shooting percentage, shooting 40.8% overall, falls off to 39% on the road. But I think that that's going to keep them lively in this game. Fully recognize how difficult it is to play at the pit, but I'm going to be willing to take the points with Nevada as a result. Now for Nevada, they're going to have a little bit of a tough time down low because you've got the size of Nelly Jr. Joseph, who's been able to give north of 8.5 rebounds per game, north of a block and a half per contest for this New Mexico team, which I do think ultimately is going to be able to win out. And Mustafa Amzil, he's provided really good versatility for this New Mexico team as well. 14 points, 6 boards, shoots about 32% from 3-point range as a relatively tall 6'10" combo player. And then Donovan Dent, 7 assists per game, but he does turn the ball over about 3 times per contest, has really locked in ever since that UCLA game, had 1 billion turnovers. And for Nevada, it's just been a little bit of a hit or miss season where they've lost a lot of close games. You've had Nick Davidson, Kobe Sanders combined for about 30 points, 7.5 assists per game. Both of these guys shoot north of 39.5% from 3-point range, while Xavier Dussel, nice off-the-ball scorer, shooting 45% from 3, 8 points per contest for a Nevada team that's only turned the ball over about 11 times per contest, so they've done a solid job there. The other ancillary pieces have been able to give you about 7 points per contest, like a Brandon Love, Justin McBride, guys like this have been interesting mixers and shakers. Dussel more around about 8 points per contest, but I do think that Nevada, a team that's been able to hold up relatively well defensively, they're going to get into a little bit more track meet against the New Mexico team that they are just playing at a blistering pace right now. For this New Mexico team, they've been able to get past the 76-point plateau in, I believe, every one of their games except for against St. John's and UCLA. So, this team has been putting up points upon points all season long. I do think they can get an up-tempo game, but Nevada has the 3-point shooting to be able to hold in a game where it might be a little bit more up-tempo than what they're accustomed to. So, this is a circumstance where I'm going to be willing to take the points with this Nevada team. I did set them as a 3.5 point underdog. Made my total 155.5, so in on the over as well. And now we hit the extra games.
The normal betting board picks are complete, but there are some extra games today, so we go into the bonus.
306-543, 306-544. Central Connecticut is on the road facing off against St. Francis. St. Francis does find themselves as an underdog at home of 6 points. Dawn's game is 138.5 to 139, and I did set my line at 7.5. I'm going to be willing to lay the number with Central Connecticut. I really like what I've seen out of the Central Connecticut Connecticut team, a top 125 team in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, going up against the St. Francis of Pennsylvania team that they're starting to show a little bit more of a sign of life, but that said, they're still quite a ways away. They've been a relatively good three-point shooting team, especially at home. At home, they are shooting about 37% from three-point range, and Bobby Rosenberger has been really the main guy for this team. For Rosenberger, he's been able to supply this team with north of 12 points per contest. He's thrown in there about 4.5 boards, a little bit over 3 assists per game, but also do have a St. Francis team that's a little bit of a lower tempo team that's turning the ball over about 13.5 times per contest. That's a little bit of an issue, and down low, the team is just completely outgunned in terms of their rebound percentage. They're outside the top 200 nationally. Meanwhile, for Central Connecticut, they've done a great job with their backcourt, just mixing and matching, and they have been one of the better teams at being able to generate turnovers, a top 175 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, many of them being live ball turnovers, with Jordan Jones, Devin Hade being able to combine for about 3.5 steals per game, and with Hade, he's thrown in there 12.5 points per contest. He has come out of nowhere, and he has been tremendous for this team. Additionally, you've got Darren Smith, who's been able to give you 8.5 points, shooting 47.5% from three-point range overall. Central Connecticut is shooting 35% from three. This team has been very good on the road thus far this season, as they've already knocked off St. Joe's on the road. They played within 2 possessions against Providence as well. So, this is a battle-tested Central Connecticut team that's gotten the job done time and time again when they've been away from home. And for Central Connecticut, in terms of their outside shooting away from home, they've been only shooting about 28.5% from three-point range. So they've seen a little bit of a fall off there. That's caused for some slogs in a lot of these road games. But in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis on the road, that's where they've really been able to shine, as they've been a top 100 team with this regard. And I do think that against a St. Francis team that has been relatively good from the outside, but Central Connecticut's perimeter defense on the road, allowing opponents to shoot just 31.8% from three-point range, with Central Connecticut having, in my opinion, the better low post play. They should find a way to get the job done in a bit of a lower scoring game. Semi-total 133.5 in on the under, and willing to lay with Central Connecticut. 3-6-5-45, 3-6-5-46. Long Island plays host to Lemoyne. Lemoyne is a underdog of 3 points, and tonight's game is 143.5 to 144. I'm going to be willing to lay it with Long Island. I did set them as a 4.5 point favorite. Long Island has been dealing with a few issues in the backcourt in terms of injuries, but all in all, this has been a team that has been able to really clean up their act. As for Long Island last year, they were well outside the top 300 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and fully recognize that not having Brent Davis out there, the transfer from Chicago State, has been hurting them. But Malachi Davis is one of the most gifted players in this conference. He's only shooting 26.5% from three, but he slashes to the rim with 17 points, stealing half, 3 assists per contest, has been able to find other guys open for nice looks, as Jamal Fuller has been able to drain 36% of his threes. He throws in there 10.5 points, 5.5 rebounds per game. You've been able to get 6.5 boards per contest. Shadrach Lassou as well, so he's been a nice contributor for this team. It is a Long Island team that is now a top 150 team with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Now, they're allowing opponents to shoot about 34% from three-point range, and that's oftentimes where Lemoyne is able to hurt you, but this Lemoyne team just has not had the outside shooting that they did a season ago, shooting only about 32.5% from three-point range, as they've dealt with so many injuries. So Cypher Owens, along with Fred Bagatis, are 2 of their top 5 scorers that have already missed 7+ games this far this season. Owens might be able to go in this one. Bagatis, he's just been in and out of the fold all season long, and you've had Robbie Carmody be in and out. Should be good to go in this one. He and Dwayne Karama are combining for about 23.5 points per contest. With Karama, he's actually shot from 2-point range 79.5%, so he's been very rock solid, one of the more efficient scorers in all of mid-major college basketball, throwing in there about 6.5 rebounds per game as well. But the fact that this team is turning the ball over north of 14 times per contest while being a relatively mid-tempo team has been hurting them. This is also a team that's getting just pounded on the glass. For Lemoyne, outside the top 300 in terms of their overall rebound rate, I do think that with Long Island, they should be able to take advantage of Lemoyne's, shall we say, deficiencies with regards to being able to hold on the ball, them not being able to do a great job on the glass. And for Zach Tekken, even though he does give you about 4.5 assists per game, he does turn the ball over 2.5 times per contest and shoots 14.8% from three-point range. So do think that Long Island finds a way to get the job done in a game that's going to be a little bit more up and down. It is semi-total at 144.5, so you're at the 143.5. I'm in on the over, and I'm willing to lay up to 4 with Long Island. 3-6-5-47, 3-6-5-48. It is Mercyhurst playing us to Stonehill. Stonehill a favorite of 2.5 to 3 points on the road. So on this game between 133.5 to a 134, and with Stonehill, I did set them as a favorite of 3 points. So at the 2.5, it's the max I'm willing to lay, but I'm going to be willing to lay it. Mercyhurst just really hasn't had a lot of home games since joining the D1 ranks, so you know that fans are going to be out there. They're going to be supporting their team, but I've liked what I've seen out of the Stonehill team this season. I felt like the transfer from Incarnate Word was exactly what they needed in Joshua Morgan. He's been able to give some stability in the backcourt as he's their top scorer with 14 points, shoots about 41% from three-point range, missed a few games earlier in the season, but he should be all good to go. This has been a Stonehill team that's been outside the top 250 with regards to the rebound rate, but they've got Todd Baronga, who was able to give you 12 points, 6 boards, 2 assists per contest. From three-point range, he's shooting 48.5% for distance. Nice 6'6", 6'7", a little bit of a combo player, so liking what I'm seeing there. And then you've got a lot of guys like Herman Kofi, Louis Simona, guys like this. They're giving you like 8 to 9 points per contest. It's a little bit more of a whole is greater than the sum of its parts approach with them. And then for Mercyhurst, this is just a shrimpy team that's not going to be able to take advantage of the fact that Stonehill is another team that they came up from the D2 ranks. A lot of times when you see these teams come up from the D2 ranks to the D1 level, they just don't have a lot of size, and you've got that right now with Mercyhurst. As right now, Mikolas Ivanauskas is the lone guy that sees meaningful minutes. That's above 6'7", has been able to give the team about 4.5 boards, 6 points per contest, but again, it's a Mercyhurst team that they themselves are well outside the top 3 with regards to rebound rate. You've got Jeff Plynudis, who's a really good just spot-up shooter, shooting 93% the free throw line, 41.5% for 3, 14.5 points per contest, and Mercyhurst as a collective, they've been a top 50 team at the free throw line, shooting 77.2% at the charity stripe. Bernie Blunt, when he's been out there, as he's missed 4 games, he shoots 94% at the free throw line, 34% for 3, 10 points per contest. Aiden Reichard, he has been able to give you about 5 boards, 11.5 points per game, but that's your main rebounder for this team, and that really does give me a lot of pause on top of the fact that this team is allowing opponents to shoot 37.5% from 3. When you don't rebound and you allow opponents to shoot 37.5% from distance, that's a big issue, and that's why I'm in on Stonehill on this one. Mercyhurst, as they did at the Division 2 level, has really been slowing things down outside the top 275 in terms of total possessions per game, and Stonehill not necessarily a team that's going to be looking to gun it as well. And to the credit of Stonehill, have been a little bit better with regards to their perimeter defense as far this season, as on the road allowing opponents to shoot 33% from three-point range. So did set my line at a 3, so at the 2.5, going to be one delayed. And I do think that this total has gone just a scotch too low with the way that Mercyhurst guards the three-point arc, set by total 135 in on the over, and then we wrap things up with 306.549, 306.550. Wagner plays us to Chicago State. Chicago State underdogs of 9.5 to 10.5 points. Tonight's game is 125. I set my total at 125.5. I'm not willing to go any further than those 125, but I'm willing to take the 125 over. Wagner outside the top 320 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Chicago State, a bottom 5 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, so not necessarily a ringing endorsement there, but Chicago State has actually cranked up their tempo. They are a top 100 team in terms of total possessions per game, and also with the Chicago State team, while they stink on offense, well, they also stink on defense. This is a team that in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they're not quite Mississippi Valley State level bad, but they're pretty bad, as they are outside the top 300 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, so that's a big issue for this team. And for Chicago State, you don't have a single guy in the roster that gives you north of 5 rebounds per game. You don't have a single guy in the roster that gives you north of 10 points per contest. They're still a relatively okay team at generating turnovers, but Scott Spinelli, a clear downgrade from Gerald Gillian and what he was able to bring to the table. As a matter of fact, they don't have a single guy that gives you north of 9 points per game, as Jalen Forrest along with Noble Crawford have both been able to give you about 8.8 points. They're throwing in there a combined 8.5 rebounds per game. Those are your main guys for this team. And for Wagner, while it's less than savory, they have been dealing with quite a few injuries over the last, we're going to call it about 2 years, even when they made the NCAA tournament last season. And you got a quartet of guys, Javier Esquera, Jakar Sanchez, RJ Green, Zaire Williams, who are all able to give you at least 8.5 points per contest. So Williams has been missing some time. They've had Ramir Moore dealing with quite a bit of an injury as well, as he's someone that was back from season ago, and he was expected to be able to give this team relatively good contributions. He's been out really since the first 2 games of the season, so they've had to really try to put that past them, but this team should be able to win the battle down low with RJ Green being able to give you about 6 boards per contest. It's a Chicago State team that really doesn't have a lot of size, and for this Wagner team, they're one of the better teams in the country in terms of being able to generate turnovers. A top 50 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. They do shoot about 34.5% from 3 when they get some clean possessions as well. The team has been well outside the top 250 in terms of taking care of the ball, but being able to have Sanchez healthy, Esquera has been able to give you 5.2 assists of fewer than 2 turnovers per game. Does feel like this team finding their sea legs if they can get a little bit more. As Xavier Blake, another guy that's been a little bit banged up. He was a 40+% three-point shooter over at UW Green Bay a few seasons ago. That's going to be big for them, but with all the injuries to Wagner and the fact that Chicago State, well, they're overall, shall we say, metrics look terrible. They have played against one of the toughest strength of schedules in all of college basketball. I think that this is a little bit lofty for a Wagner team that is not averaging north of 62 points per game this far this season. So against D1 competition, because they played against some non-D1 team where they scored north of 100 points. So circumstance where somehow line to 9.5, 10 plus, taking the points with Chicago State and in on the 125 over. And that'll wrap things up for the Friday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN family podcast. Big thanks to Blake Lovell, who does great work over at Southeastern 16. He joined me in the last segment. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at GNet_D1. Keep in mind, letters DM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review, coming at you guys every single day on this podcast, which means I'm back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.